All right, so today we're going to talk about heating in the bus. And so one of the most expensive things to do with electricity is heating water or air. And so we've opted not to do that if we can. So what we've bought is these, this is just a diesel heater. And so this one is a 5 kilowatt version, which turns out is about, I think about 18,000 BTU of heat. And so we have our air conditioner, our mini split does heat as well as cool, and the heat on that is, I believe, 12,000 BTU. But to do that, it requires about 1,000 watts. So by contrast, this little guy runs on 12 volts, and it pulls about 10 amps for maybe the first minute or 2 minutes, and then I think 1 amp or half an amp depending on how hot you're running this thing. And so this has the potential to use far less electricity, but at the expense of using diesel. So it comes with this 10-liter tank, and it's designed to be run with diesel. And so since our bus is diesel, it's a fairly good fit. So we are going to bench test this like we always do. So we'll get it all hooked up, get it wired up, and run it and make sure it runs and everything before we put it in, and make sure we have an understanding of how it runs and what it does and things like that before we put this in. So there are a lot of Facebook groups now based around these. They're just, most people just call them Chinese diesel heaters, and there's grown up quite a big community. And the controller it comes with is this guy, and it's an LCD, but it doesn't offer a lot of configurability. And so there is a guy in Australia who makes an aftermarket controller that does MQTT, does all the home automation stuff. So we just have this for now, but we're looking into possibly upgrading the controller. We'll see. So we're thinking about installing 2 of these. One would go in the front area, like the living room kind of area, in the kitchen, and it would heat that area. And then the other one would go in the very back in the kids' room, so it would heat the kids' room, and then we would pipe it in to heat the bathroom as well. And so we've only bought one so far because we're going to test it and see if it meets our needs and see if it works the way we think it should. They are really small, which is one of the benefits of this is a really small package, and the heat they produce, unlike a propane furnace, is dry. So it's a dry air. It doesn't introduce any more moisture into the air. And so that's another reason that we're choosing this over like a traditional propane furnace. So we've gone ahead and drilled out a big hole down here, and so all of the exhaust and the intake will go down through the floor, and it'll actually curve and it'll exhaust into the engine bay area. And so it'll kind of, if it's really cold, it'll sort of keep that little area warm as well with the exhaust that is produced by this. So anyway, this just goes in more or less just like this. Oh, let me find it. It's gonna fit like that, and the tank will actually be down in the bay. Now we could tap our diesel tank, our big giant tank for the bus, but we're not going to do that at this point. We're just going to use the kind of the small little auxiliary tank that it comes with for now, just so we can keep a close eye on its fuel usage and things like that. If we feel like it, we'll tap the other line later. We can always do that down the road. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and install this, something like this. And so there'll be a bed that rides here, and so this will be just right under the bed. And this is the intake side, the exhaust side's on the other side. It'll go in through this T and then go in there and out there. So we'll go ahead and take you downstairs and show you sort of what the bottom of it looks like. All right, so here we are down in the bay. We can see how stuff comes through here. Now it's just kind of unorganized right now. We just kind of stuck it through. But we've made this little kind of shelf thing in here so we can hold our sewer pipe and stuff like that. but the little tank that we had talked about is gonna rest there. So we're gonna build some little bracketry to hold this guy in here. And so that's where he'll live. So this is in the very back of the bus. So if I back up, we can see this is the back of the bus. All right, so we're getting ready to install the connector for the bottom of the fuel line, and when it comes, it looks like this. So we've drawn a line where we have a little piece of metal that this rests against. So we want to put it as far to the left as we can, and then we're going to go down as far as we can. The book doesn't say how big of a hole to drill for this, so we're just going to start kind of small and then work our way up and see what size hole it is. Nope, it's not that. 15/16 is pretty dang close.
15 or 5?
5/16. So.
The 15/16 would be a really big hole.
Yes, it would.
Okay, 5/16.
I think 5/16. So I'm gonna shake all this stuff out. We'll use air to blow it out. Okay, so it's a little tricky to get the little plug in there. So I watched somebody else do this. I didn't come up with this, but what you do is you feed kind of a relatively stiff little piece of like baling wire through, and then you just kind of kink the end a little bit, and you use that to pull it all the way through with the wire. And now that we've got it through this far, we can go ahead and put on the O-rings and the nut, and it should be a you know, with the O-rings and stuff, it should be a nice tight seal. So all right, so we have run the power up from the bottom, and so now we're going to connect it to this diesel heater, and then it'll continue on to the front where we'll have another diesel heater. And so we're going to make the connections now. So these diesel heaters have this wiring harness that they come with. And so they have 12 volts here that they take, and then this is for the pump. So we'll drill a hole, and this will go down into the bay directly underneath for the pump. And then this other wire is for the display. So this one for the display, we're probably going to go up and around and put it behind the air conditioner up on the wall, so it's a little bit further away from the hot air. See that at the end, so it's going in. That's good. And usually put one of those big old nasty things on it. Yeah, it's not coming. All right, so the next step in mounting our diesel heater was installing the fuel pump. And so we've made a couple lines on here between 15 and 30 degrees, or 15 and 35 degrees it said. And so we used a riv nut tool, so that's this guy here. And we put a riv nut in the rear and then mounted our little rubber isolator through that. And we've got that at about 30 degrees or so. That's about what we targeted. So now we're gonna hook up the fuel lines, and we've got our fuel tank, which we previously had this on. So we're gonna hook a fuel line to here. We'll hook a fuel line here, which is this guy here, and a fuel line to the back there on the filter. And we should be good to go to test fire this thing. So we've also brought the pump down, so we had to cut the wire because the connector on it's fairly large. So we'll resolder this, get it all back together, and then hook everything up and give it a test. All right, so we've powered him on now. He's installed down here. And we're using instructions that we found online because the book isn't written very well, and so we need to prime it first. So to prime it, it said push these both down, and so it'll say H off, and so go to H on, and we can hear the pump going. So we'll go downstairs and see, you know, when the fuel's all cleared out, then we'll start it up. Okay, here we are. We can hear the pump going, and we can see fuel being moved through, so it's already gone and cleared all the air bubbles out of this line, and so now it's filling up this it's filling up the filter. So once the filter is full, we should start seeing this line have more fuel in it. So if we were to see leaks, they would be now. So we're not seeing any so far. So far so good. So we're starting to get some fuel. There we go. We're at full power. You can see we're evacuating heat. That's blowing onto some cast iron water pipe. So hopefully that'll pre-warm the engine a little bit. So, but it's not too loud. We didn't put the exhaust on. We have just the pipe coming out. We'll see if we end up putting the exhaust on or not, or end up backing it back from that, whatever that is. It looks like a water spigot there. So we'll see how that goes. But so far, it looks like it's working okay. It is pumping a little bit of air into the lines. You can see it a little bit, but the pump seems to be running fine, and there's blowing really hot air inside. So anyway, we're gonna run it just for a little bit. It's not exactly cold today, so we're just gonna run it for a little bit to make sure it works. All right, we've got it running. It's pretty warm in here already, so we had to just set it for 1 degree higher than it is, and it's pumping, and it's warm. It's hot in here. It's actually too warm. So anyway, it's working, and so I think we're gonna shut it down and see how that goes. All right, so we're letting it cool down now. It went up, it got up to heat, started heating everything up, and then we went ahead and shut it down. It's got a whole shutdown procedure that it does to cool itself off and to make sure that the chamber doesn't have any more stuff in it. So there, it finally turned off. So the next steps are going to be to run a hose. So we're going to run a hose from the outlet, like a 4-inch heater hose. We're going to run it back and probably through this hole that we drilled here, and then tee it off. We can see the tee there, so that the hot air comes out way over here, trying to keep it away from the intake, and then that will go in and heat the bathroom area. So anyway, that'll be the next steps, and so the heater appears to be working just fine.